You're rewarded by going to the Super Bowl. And that year, I think, was the very first time that they moved the Super Bowl away from California and Miami, and you go to the great city of Detroit.
Yep.
And yes, you're playing indoors, but there was what recreation? You see the Super Bowl media stuff today where, they're out in the sun and everyone's having a good time or sitting by a pool, or the old famous Joe Namath laying by the pool. You guys didn't really have that.
No, but we were just so thrilled to go to a Super Bowl. We would have played it in Yugoslavia or, wherever they told us to go play it. Would we have preferred to be in Florida like Super Bowl 23 in 1988 when they were down in Miami? Yeah, probably would have preferred that. But we were just real excited to play in a Super Bowl. Was that team in 1981? That is the first playoff team, our first team that ever won a playoff game in franchise history. Bengals had never won a playoff game prior to that season. We beat the Buffalo Bills in our first playoff game to break that streak. First team to win the AFC Championship, obviously, against San Diego, and then the first team to go to the Super Bowl. We didn't get it done, but it was a thrill to go up there and play. But it was cold that day. I mean, that Super Bowl was cold. If we had to play that bad boy outside, that would have been another freezer bowl day. It was crazy. I remember my parents and family members, both sides, my wife's and my side of the family, talking about how tough it was, parking and having to walk a good distance to get to the stadium, how cold it was out that day.
The game. What do here we are many years after. Talk about what you still remember. So close to having, you talk about Forrest Gregg having those rings. So close to having one on your own hand.
Yeah, and nobody to blame but ourselves, Dave. In the biggest game of our lives, we self-destructed. We had 4 turnovers and allowed a goal line stand. So in my mind, that's 5 turnovers. And the 49ers had 1. So we went -4. You're not going to beat a high school state champion going -4 in a Super Bowl. We had more yards. First time ever, the loser outgained the winner. We had more yards offense. They didn't even have 300 yards against our defense. But we fumbled kickoffs to give them short fields. We, threw interceptions. We have a long reception inside the 20-yard in the red zone, inside the 20 to score and fumble. Just self-destruction. Goal line stand, we have mental mistakes. Blocker motions across the backfield and runs right by his assignment on the outside. The unblocked guy comes in and hits the running back 4 yards in the backfield, and he has a hell of a run just to get back close to the line of scrimmage. A route that is caught short of the goal line. The route is supposed to take the player well into the end zone. Cut it short. It stopped at the half-yard line. Mental mistakes, turnovers, things you can't have. You want to play your cleanest game mentally and turnover standpoint possible when you're in the biggest game of your life. And we were just the opposite. I'll give the 49ers credit. It wasn't, some of it was us, some of it was self-destruction, some of it was induced by, their play. But we had a big hand in beating ourselves. When you do the things that we did in that game and you're playing against a worthy opponent, you're giving yourself no shot to win the football game. It's amazing to me. We scored late to make it a 5-point football game. It was a 12-point football game. We score right at the very end of the game to make it a 5-point game. So to me, it was amazing that it ended up just being a 5-point differential the way we played in that football game. Very disappointing. I can remember tons, almost on a play-by-play basis from that game, Dave. You remember the losses even more so than big wins.
You play a couple more years in Cincinnati. You make a significant decision that changes your kind of career path, at least you think, by, as you mentioned, you played for the USFL, New Jersey Generals, and for a man who just was the president the previous 4 years, Donald J. Trump. Talk about that experience of one, leaving the NFL, because you had a chance early to go to the World Football League. You came out of Syracuse, and you make that decision to go to the USFL, but you don't really sign a a football contract. You end up signing a 10-year guaranteed personal services contract with Donald Trump. Talk about the decision-making process when you decided to do that and what your hopes and desires were when you signed that contract.
Well, I played 10 years in the National Football League, so I was basically a year-to-year situation. And, sometimes it's funny, you go Google or whatever to get information, and whoever put that 10-year guarantee is so incorrect. It was a two-year contract. 2 years of my contract were guaranteed against injury and skill. So if I got injured or cut, I was going to get all the money. And never had that in the National Football League. The NFL wasn't doing much of that. And if they did do it, it was only to like superstar, Hall of Fame type players, not guys like me. So when Donald Trump agreed to guarantee, I got a signing bonus and then guarantee 2 years of a contract, and called it a personal services contract because of that fact that it was being guaranteed by his net worth on a personal basis. And that's the only reason I decided to do it is, that the NFL, I had a pension 10 years into the NFL pension. Every year that you play and betters and increases your NFL pension. There's no pension or anything like that in the USFL. But I thought, boy, if I get 2 years at this stage of my career guaranteed, it'd be hard to turn down. And agreed to do it. Ryan Sipe left the Browns. He was our quarterback. Jim LeClaire and I left the Cincinnati Bengals. There were quite a few guys. Gary Barbaro left the Kansas City Chiefs. There were quite a few guys that Donald Trump had lured to play in the USFL for the New Jersey Generals. Plus, they had Herschel Walker, and they had just drafted Doug Flutie. They drafted Doug Flutie the second year. But that was Donald Trump's second year I was with the team. That was Donald Trump's mindset, was, collect Heisman Trophy winners, collect as many good football players as he could. The Philadelphia Star with Jim Mora, they were outstanding. And they won a couple of titles. They were really good. We lost to them in the playoffs. But it was an interesting season. There were 18 games in the USFL season, 2 preseason games, 18 regular season games. I mean, they were just literally finished an NFL season 6 weeks, maybe even 5 weeks later. I'm at training camp for my first USFL season. There was no break because we played in the spring. So I had to go down to Florida in January, report to training camp, the New Jersey Generals in the USFL, after having played a full NFL season. I was 32 years old. You talk about after that USFL season was over with, rigor mortis had set in. I went to Cape Cod for a month and laid in the ocean, natural whirlpool. I mean, it was a tough task physically, to be sure.
We talk about athletes, superstar athletes, and Bo Jackson comes to mind. Maybe some people think of Deion Sanders, but you mentioned him, Herschel Walker. Talk about Herschel, because when I was in high school, I remember Herschel was in Georgia, and you sit there and go, wow, he's a freak.
He is a freak. I mean, Herschel Walker did. I remember we went into his room one night, and he was doing sets of sit-ups and push-ups, 100 of each. 100 sit-ups, roll over, do 100 push-ups. 100 sit-ups, roll over, do 100 push-ups. And he was doing at least 1,000, sometimes 2,000 a day. So he was unbelievable. He was an amazing specimen. He ran a sub 4.340 and shoulder pad and helmets. So he was unique. And world-class athlete in terms of his ability to run and the power that he generated. Plus, as good a football player as he was even a better human being, one of those kind of guys. I mean, Herschel Walker might have been as quality a human being as I've ever met. And he was a black belt in martial arts. I remember one time he did this spin kick thing, and it was before I get my LASIK procedure in my eyes, so I had my contacts out. I see this big black mass coming at me and stops his foot like right in front of my face. I was like, whoa. I said, Herschel, man, you would have broken my face. He goes, I know to stop right there. I said, what if I had taken a step toward you? I would have stopped right here. So he was unbelievable, a huge talent. He would run everywhere. Had the room by himself because his sleep habits were different. He was a very interesting guy and just an incredible athlete. I mean, I don't know what his body fat was, but if you could find any on his body, you're a better man than me. That guy was just stacked. He was incredible.
You mentioned going to Syracuse. You ended up going to the Newhouse School of Communications. Talk about your transition from the field to broadcasting. And then also talk about, you've worked some great play-by-play men. You currently work with Dan Horde, but you have seen several people that have come through that booth with you over the years calling Bengals games that are people who have left impressions on fans of the Bengals.
Absolutely. And I credit it all to Mike Brown. I mean, I literally get a message from Jan, Mike Brown's assistant, that Mike Brown wanted to see me, and I go down to see Mike Brown, and he asked if I'd have an interest in doing color on the Bengals radio network. Don Burrows, they were making a change at that spot, and he wondered if I had an interest. And I said, yeah. He said, well, go ahead over to WKRC and audition. And so I did, and then just started doing the Bengals games on radio. And that was in 1986, and been doing them ever since. So it was just a great opportunity, something that that I had hoped might have a chance to do. And then during that time frame, started doing college football as well. Started doing SEC, ACC games, and then the Big 12 was formed, where the Big 8 and the Southwest Conference came together and formed the Big 12. And the Fox was doing the broadcast, and they contacted me about an interest in doing Big 12 games. So I was able to do a Big 12 game of the week from a TV standpoint on Saturdays, and then get to the Bengals game on Sunday. So it was pretty hectic. Like you mentioned, we did high school games there for a few years. So Thursday night doing high school, fly out Friday to a Big 12 destination, do that game Saturday, fly to where the Bengals were playing on Sunday, if either back to Cincinnati or on the road, catch up with them, and either fly back with the team or drive home. So it was full weekends, fun, football-packed weekends, no question about it. And it was very, very enjoyable.
What's the hardest part of preparing for a game broadcast? And you talk about Thursday night doing high school here locally in the Cincinnati area. Here's your two rosters of the game, and you're trying to learn these young men. And then, like you said, on the plane, out to do a Big 12 game, and then back for the Bengals against whoever they're playing against. What's the hardest part of putting together what you need to have for a broadcast?
Yeah, I mean, keeping the name straight was a challenge. It's like you don't want to do a disservice to a family if they're watching or listening by butchering the name. And as you know, Dave, I mean, there's a lot of high school guys on those sidelines. And some games, a lot of them get in there and play. So that part of it was just to make sure that you had pronunciations properly, memorized and all that sort of thing. You don't want to call somebody's name out incorrectly. That's basically not acceptable from family members and friends that are listening or watching or both. So that part of it is the first part. And then just finding out if you can't get any tape of what they're doing, you're really relying on coaches, conference calls, and quiz the coaches as much as you possibly can with information that you need to have to be able to get yourself ready for the game if you can't get your eyes on any tape as to what they run schematically, offensively, defensively, and that sort of thing. And so it's it was definitely a challenge, and did a lot of studying, a lot of prep on planes to and from. But the good news is with the Bengals games, at least there's continuity. You only have one team you really have to prepare for. The Bengals, you knew exactly what happened the week before. You're part of what the Bengals are doing on a week-to-week basis. So that part of the preparation was just one team, but preparing for two in high school and for two at the collegiate level. And if you were fortunate, you might have the same college team another game or maybe even three times during the course of the season. You really hope that would happen because it would make the prep a lot easier.
Dave Lapham here, and every day I am grateful for my experience to have played professional football. As a player, I realized self-motivation, leadership, and appreciating your teammates are key. At First Star Logistics, you can use those same attributes to create the life you want for you and your family. Build your future by working hard like I did. You'll see results both on and off the field. Call First Star Logistics today and be part of our winning team.
I want to turn the subject to something I think a lot of Bengals fans feel slighted about. And what the heck is the deal with the Hall of Fame and the Cincinnati Bengals? Because, yes, we have Anthony Munoz up there. Well deserving.
Yes.
But, guys, you've mentioned Ken Anderson, Kenny Riley.
Yep.
Why haven't these guys got the call? I mean, it's, even we can add maybe Willie Anderson into that conversation of more current Bengals who have played, who should maybe be getting that call. Is there something? What's missing for the Cincinnati Bengals greats to get that call?
Yeah, that's very frustrating because there are players that have been on a dynasty. There's really good players from dynasty teams that are in the Hall of Fame, and outstanding players from non-dynasty teams that aren't in the Hall of Fame, and maybe not as big a market. I think the market size and the run that we had in the 80s, in my mind, Anthony's in the Hall of Fame, but other players that were on those teams in the 80s, and it was 81 and 88, 2 Super Bowl appearances in the front and back end of that decade. Kenny Riley was part of that mix. I think Max Montoya, although he went to the Raiders and ended up playing with the Raiders, but I think Max played at a high level. He was as good as he was the top handful of guards for a long time during the course of his career. Kenny Riley, like you mentioned, I mean, there's a lot of people. Isaac Curtis, I think, changed the game. They had the Isaac Curtis rule, for God's sake. When you are the reason that a rule is changed, and Paul Brown heavily influenced, obviously, the Rules Committee and changed that rule about. I mean, I remember Mel Blount tackling Isaac Curtis, and they could do anything to him. They could cut his legs, do anything they wanted, and then it was hands off after 5 yards. The Isaac Curtis rule. When you're that kind of player, that a rule is changed, the way they play the game in the National Football League changes because of you and what teams are trying to do to eliminate you. There has to be a reason. I think you were pretty good. So there are quite a few guys, I think, that different market, different situation. It's very frustrating, and I think unfair to a lot of guys.
I want to kind of change the subject just before we wrap this up, because you come to Cincinnati in the heyday of the Big Red Machine. You've already told us you grew up a fan of New England sports, the Red Sox, Celtics, Pats, 75 World Series.
Right.
Here you are in the city of Cincinnati, and you've become friends with a lot of the guys who were playing for the Reds. Talk about the pulling of the heartstrings.
Yeah, that World Series, that Game 6, when Carlton Fisk, hit the home run in Game 6, was just I think it was Game 6 was just unbelievable. It was a tug of war of emotions, because I had gotten to know a little bit, guys like Pete Rose and Johnny Bench, and Sparky Emerson had met some of these guys and had gotten to know them a little bit, like at sports stags or whatever the case may be. And but your childhood upbringing is the Red Sox, and I was still a huge Red Sox fan. Louis Tiant and Carlton Fisk and everybody, Burleson, all these guys on that Red Sox team, Fred Lynn, all these guys that were so important and instrumental. So I remember we were at a banquet after the opener. We played, I think it was the Cleveland Browns, and we go to this fundraiser banquet, and everybody on the team is there, and Louis Tiant had just pitched a really good game against the Cincinnati Reds, and my father-in-law, who's a real Bostonite, born and raised there, spent his whole life there. He gets up and starts waving a napkin and starts chanting, Louis Tiant. Oh my gosh. I'm like, sit down. This is not the venue for that type of celebration. So yeah, it was very interesting. I would have been okay with whoever won, but I know what it's like to lose the Super Bowl, so I can only imagine what it's like to lose a World Series in the 7th game. I mean, that has to be tough for the old Bo Sox, but it was great for the Cincinnati Reds. There's no question about it.
See, it seems like many players, both Reds and Bengals, in their career in Cincinnati, and they end up staying in Cincinnati. What is it about this city that makes it the place to plant those long-term roots?
Yeah, I mean, both my wife and I are from neighboring hometowns north of Boston. And I mean, I think initially she was thinking that every offseason we were going to go back there. But after the first year, we went back there after my rookie year. Then we started having children right away. In my second year, we were young parents and decided, let's establish roots and stay in Cincinnati. And very shortly thereafter, she could have worked for the Chamber of Commerce of Cincinnati. Just a great place to raise a family. It has a lot of big city enticements like restaurants and theater and sports and all those sort of things without the big city clutter and the big city hassles and headaches. So Cincinnati is I think, a very well kept secret. I don't think it's as big a secret anymore, but back in the 70s and into the 80s, it was a very well kept secret. And when my family would come out to Cincinnati, they were like, oh, I had no idea Cincinnati had all this to offer. And I remember when I got drafted, my grandfather, when I told him I got drafted by the Cincinnati Bengals, he goes, let me see where Cincinnati is in the state of Ohio. He goes, well, heck, you got drafted in Kentucky, son. You're just about in Kentucky. So it's pretty interesting, the perception that people had, I think, of Cincinnati. I don't think it's that way anymore, but it is a great place to raise a family. There's no two ways about it.
If we went back and talked to go back to youth sports, high school sports, college, pros, and talk to coaches and former teammates, what would they say about Dave Lapham?
I think, always worked hard to try to improve himself. Was never satisfied, never really thought he had arrived as such, always felt like there was miles to go before you rest, and ways to improve, ways to get better, and basically do anything for the betterment and good of the team. If it meant playing whatever position it meant or doing whatever it might be, and being there for teammates, not just on the field, but off the field. I think I was raised to value relationships, and I think relationships are the key to success in anything, and trying to, have a good idea about people skills and how to deal with people and handle situations. And I mean, anything from marriage to success in the workplace and everything in between is all based on relationships. It's all relationship driven. So I think they feel like I've tried to do my best in that regard.
Over the past several years, you've built, as you talk about, relationships with the folks here at First Star Logistics. Again, we're recording this in the First Star Logistics studios. What made First Star Logistics a company that you wanted to partner with long term?
I think the values. Kevin has done an unbelievable job. He's very entrepreneurial, to take an idea and to make that idea and dream a reality, I think is special. And anybody that achieves that, I think is a special human being. And along the way, you're going to make not only your life, but a lot of people's lives better. And I think he is, he's all of that. And I think he's goal oriented, and I think he's achieved some goals, but that's the one thing that Super Bowl season taught me. In 1981, like I said, we'd never won a playoff game. So I always had this goal orientation of the pie in the sky, gold standard, or nothing, and nothing in between. That leads to nothing but disappointment. So 1981 season taught me, all right, well, let's have a 500 season at least. Win 8 games already been okay. Let's try to win 10 games, get to 10. Try to win the division. In winning the division, we win 12 games, get home field advantage to the playoffs. Let's win a playoff game. Never been done. Let's win the. So now you're climbing the ladder of success one rung at a time. Pretty soon you're at the top of the mountain. I think that's what Kevin's doing. Is he's got goals along the way. I'm sure he's got a big pie in the sky, huge goal, but he's achieving a lot of them along the way. And you reach out, grab it, reward yourself, feel good about yourself, and continue to climb. That's what I like about First Star Logistics. They're highly successful, but they're not content. You know, they still want to do more, be better, and do everything to the best of their ability. And that's the kind of place you want to be.
Well, Dave, I know we've kept you here a long time. I appreciate you letting me hijack your video cast here in the Dave Lapham in the Trenches. We want to tell people, make sure to check for more content on all different, social media, Twitter and Facebook and Instagram and YouTube and podcast and so forth from a guy who I have great respect for and appreciate the fact you were willing to take the time to sit down with me today and kind of go back and dig into your past, your life. And we wish you nothing but continued success in everything you do.
Dave, I appreciate it. And you did your homework. You brought back a lot of good memories, my man. I enjoyed it. I know I know anybody that listens to this to start to finish, I feel sorry for you. You don't have much going on. But really do appreciate it. And it was a lot of fun, Dave. Thanks.
Thank you.